Well, I was going to tell a joke, but the Cleveland Browns and Ryan Day are two jokes right off the rip. Welcome to Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Hope everyone has a great holiday coming up next week. Welcome to today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out the show on social media, Instagram, Hoty Raw Takes, Facebook, Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty, and Twitter/X. You can find me at Hoty Andrew. Well, I have the slate right now, the bracket of every single college football playoff game coming up this weekend. We have essentially 4 rounds to go before we find out who the national champion is. And, of course, getting the bye, Oregon, Boise State, Georgia, and Arizona State. I didn't say that in the proper seeding order, excuse me. Oregon is the 1 seed, 2 is Georgia, 3 is Boise State, and 4 is Arizona State. But before we get into anything else, beyond just those 4, as I said before numerous times, I think Oregon's going to win the whole thing. I wanted to reflect on some of the comments that were made on some of the videos that we had in recent weeks. We had quite a few, and so I just want to get those shout-outs out there here in just 1 second. But as I said, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and also make sure to please check the show out on social media. All right. Let's take a look at one of the comments here, and I'm going to give everybody a shout-out. This one was from Rebel Soul _ I was wrong on Jameis Winston. It happened, so Rebel Soul _ I want to thank you for your comment. Ryan Dunn 2930. Yeah, Browns could have had an actual franchise quarterback. The energy would still be insane. Y'all flubbed. I want to thank Ryan Dunn 2930 for that comment. And another comment I had made recently, actually, on the Baker Mayfield full video. This one was from the other day. That comment comes from my grandmother, actually, Joan Hoty. You were right to apologize over Baker Mayfield. It's always good to admit when you're wrong. So I want to thank my grandma for that, and thank you for commenting on my recent Raw Takes video. So shout out to the recent comments. Another one, one more too. Ryan Leaf, which is my buddy, actually. I know who this is. He commented on the Jimenez trade and saying that the Jimenez trade and the money are separate issues. And I just want to say, no, they're not. They're not separate issues. Dolan needs to spend more money, and that is absolutely related to him spending money. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. But it's a Ryan Leaf meme account, and he posted that on YouTube on the Jimenez trade. So I want to thank Alex for the comment either way. I know who it is. It's my buddy. So Ryan Leaf there with that comment. Not Ryan Leaf, the former San Diego Chargers bust. So let's get you to the bracket, and we're going to discuss some of these games, my predictions, my thoughts. And we'll start off with the first round, Texas versus Clemson. Texas has been an outstanding program all season long. They didn't get the bye, probably rightfully so, when you look at the season Georgia had in the head-to-head matchup there. Texas, though, they had a blowout win over Michigan, which in hindsight wasn't that impressive. But they had a few really good moments. Their offense is very explosive. And you look at the quarterback play you see from Texas as well. It's been really, really phenomenal, as I'm looking at Clemson's numbers right now, too. But you have to give credit to Ewers, of course, the quarterback for Texas for the season he's had. You look at the way Clemson runs the football. They have guys that could run really well, and I've always said how I really love that Dabo Swinney has stuck it to the NCAA a little bit by continuing to recruit, by not really using the transfer portal, and still getting it into the college football playoff as the 12 seed. Very impressive by them. This is going to be, I think, a closer game than people realize, but I still think Texas overall is the better program. Clemson at times is fun, but this is not the Clemson days of old where you had Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and more explosive offensive players, I should say, especially from the quarterback position. And based on the recruiting, I'm not so sure that Clemson is going to have the same guys that the transfer portal players that are playing for Texas right now. So I'm going to take Texas to win that game. Let's go 28-21. I think Clemson keeps it close. I think they make it a fun one. But I think Texas absolutely outmatches them. And we'll see Texas most likely play number 4 seeded Arizona State next week, which they should easily win. They may actually end up going right to the semifinals. I'm not so sure I'm sold on them playing Arizona State at all. But Arizona State getting a bye, and rightfully so. We'll go to Penn State and SMU for a second. A lot of these teams like SMU, you never really know what they could do once they get to the playoff. Obviously, they had a really tremendous season. They got in over Alabama, thankfully. And that was the big surprise during the college football selection show. Was SMU going to get in, or was it going to be Alabama? SMU ended up getting in. They're going to play Penn State here. Penn State obviously struggles in the big-time matchups. Penn State struggled with Ohio State earlier this year, but, I mean, granted, they kept it close. They actually looked probably a lot better against Oregon than they did against Ohio State. But football's just that back-and-forth kind of sport. That was, of course, in the Big Ten Championship. So Penn State could pull this one out. They should pretty easily. If SMU actually upsets here, that also shows a lot more about their conference and the program that they are. They got in over Alabama. I think a lot of us are happy about that. So good for SMU, but I think Penn State is clearly the better program here. But we've seen Penn State struggle against these big-time matchups before, and I would not be surprised if Penn State ends up faltering here as well. We all know their record against Ohio State and Michigan in recent years as well. So Notre Dame, Indiana, the Battle of Indiana there. The Hoosiers and the Fighting Irish. I like Notre Dame to win this game. Indiana, just based on their schedule, it was a joke. And when they played the other playoff team listed, of course, Ohio State, they got absolutely pummeled. The Buckeyes essentially just rolled over and took it to them. I think Notre Dame is clearly the better program here. I know this whole non-conference situation with Notre Dame gets very, very confusing at times, but Notre Dame is definitely the better program. Notre Dame, I think, should win this game, but we sometimes overestimate Notre Dame and they end up faltering you. I don't think in this instance that's going to be the case. I like the Fighting Irish over the Hoosiers. I think Indiana had a great season. They obviously extended Curt Cignetti. Good for him. He's a great coach, I think. I think Indiana's on the right path to build something special here, but I'm not so sure how special it's going to be because they really haven't played anybody. Penn State has played even tougher opponents than Indiana, and they made it to the Big Ten Championship. So I'm going to take the Notre Dame Fighting Irish over Indiana this weekend in the playoff game. But as I said, Indiana can't hang their hat on this season. Curt Cignetti getting that extension. What a year it's been for the Hoosiers. And then Ohio State and Tennessee. The Vols can come around and they can upset you. We've seen some pretty impressive wins from Tennessee this season when you look at their schedule. A lot of joke wins, though. I mean, obviously they beat teams like Florida, who wasn't that good this year. They did lose to Arkansas, which is kind of a weird game, so clearly they're faulty at times. They blew out Kent State easily, but I think everybody in Ohio especially knows that beating Kent State is typically very, very easy when you're an AP top 25 team. They beat Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt, of course, beat Alabama, so they won that game 36-23. Of course, Tennessee beat Alabama as well when you look at their record at 24-17. I mean, it's just been a phenomenal season for Tennessee overall, but they have a lot to go, I think, in order to end up winning this game against Ohio State. I think there's definitely going to be a different mindset. I'm on Ryan Day, Will Howard, and this Ohio State offense. You look at the defense, Ohio State, I think, absolutely has the ability to shut down Tennessee, and it's at home. So I like Ohio State to win this game. Personally, I don't necessarily care if Ohio State wins this game because, as I've mentioned numerous times, a national title means squat to me. If there's an L next to the Michigan game, there has to be a W next to it for me to mean anything because Michigan will still hang that over their hats all season. Oh, we beat the national championship. Not only that, it's still history. That game always means everything. It still means everything. And, of course, obviously reports on the AD saying Ryan Day should be the coach there. That's a joke. Obviously, you look at a guy like Nico Iamavila, who's I almost said pitch there. He's almost thrown for almost 3,000 yards this season. That's going to be a big matchup for Ohio State to try to figure it out and pin it down. I think Ohio State can defensively. I like Ohio State to win this game, maybe 20-17. It wouldn't surprise me if Ohio State loses. And as I said, I'm not necessarily sure which direction I'm rooting for in this game, but we'll have to see. So those are my college football predictions. I have Ohio State advancing. I have Notre Dame advancing. I have Penn State advancing. And I have Texas advancing out of those matchups. I wish everybody well this weekend. Hope everyone has a great time watching the college football playoff games because there is some thrillers that I think we're going to see. And it's exciting. It's the first 12-team playoff bracket. That's what I'm excited about, despite Ohio State, I think, really having a bum of a season because they lost to Michigan. But you know what? Let's see how this 12-team playoff format works out. A lot of us have been screaming for it for a long time, me included. This is the one thing about college football that actually made me more excited to watch. And I'm excited to see what takes place this weekend. And on Short Take Saturday, you'll have my final thoughts on all the games and more. So make sure to stay tuned for that video coming out this weekend after all the games take place. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about the Cleveland Cavaliers and if they win or lose to the Milwaukee Bucks on Friday, who have gotten steaming hot after winning the NBA Cup. Ooh boy, the NBA Cup, the almighty NBA Cup. How could we forget about that? All right. Let's move things onward to quarterback benchings. Dorian Thompson-Robinson benching for Dorian I cannot speak today, everybody, but thank you for tuning in to Raw Takes anyway. Much appreciated. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is starting for Jameis Winston. So Jameis Winston, obviously, having a rough outing with those turnovers. It's becoming a problem for the Cleveland Browns. It's costing them ball games. Dorian Thompson-Robinson coming in. As I said before, I'm not a huge fan of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I would personally keep Jameis out there. I want to see what's more so inside Jameis. I don't care if he turns the football over 2 or 3 times and it costs us games at this point. I almost would much rather have that because I just know that Dorian Thompson-Robinson's not the future. But I'm not head coach Kevin Stefanski. He's going to make this decision. It's probably the right decision, too, honestly. I mean, I'm not going to argue that probably starting DTR to see what you have in him because Jameis Winston's probably not your future is the right way to go. But, you know what? Let's just see what this turns into. It's in Cincinnati, where I think the Browns are going to get swept by the Bengals for the first time since the 0-16 season. But having said that, you know, there's a lot to hang your hat on here for the Cleveland Browns, in fact, because they're probably going to have a high pick either way. The season was a mess, but we're going to see how they recoup and rekindle going into the offseason. Obviously, a huge draft coming up, and there's going to be a lot of question marks behind what's going to stick around, what's going to change, what adjustments are going to be made, so you're not at 3-11 at this point in the season next year. Hopefully, you're at 11-3. I don't know if the Browns will be that hot next year, but hopefully they will be. I mean, that's the mission in the NFL. It's different every year. And a lot of people are saying now the Browns are years and years and years away. The NFL, you're only really a good year away from possibly turning a program around. We've seen the San Francisco 49ers a few years back go to the Super Bowl after a 4-12 season. So a turnaround can happen just like that in the National Football League. It's a year-to-year league. It's not a league where, you know, you're a contender and then all of a sudden you're not. I mean, look at the Browns. Last year they were in the playoffs. This year they're not going anywhere. And they're even worse than they've been in the last 4 or 5 seasons. So yes, it's a year-to-year league. It's not a league where you're 4 or 5 years away. That's the NBA, that's Major League Baseball. The NFL, you're one good offseason away from possibly turning your program around. And so far, look at the Denver Broncos. Did anyone think the Denver Broncos were going to be fighting for a playoff spot, likely to get that playoff spot at this point of the season? I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. With a rookie quarterback, Sean Payton has figured it out, moving off of Russell Wilson, clearly the right decision. And look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did anyone think that they're in contention to win the division? I think everyone thought Baltimore and Cincinnati would be better than Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's probably going to win the AFC North. So, yeah, it's a year-to-year league. It's not a league where you're just going to be terrible and then you could just get better. I mean, it's not like that over a 4 or 5 year span, that is. So I think it's absolutely ridiculous to say, oh, the Browns are 4 or 5 years away. No, the Browns are 1 year away, 1 off season away from possibly getting back into the conversation, and they could easily do so. Look at last season. They were in contention last season. They're not this season because it's a year-to-year league. It's not a year-to-years league. It's a year-to-year league. 1 bad year could turn into 1 good year easily. We've seen this in the NFL. Remember the 2019 Browns? They went really bad to really good like that. So it can happen. This league is absolutely wild, and it's happened numerous times in the past. We've seen defending Super Bowl champions not make the playoffs the final year. Let's bring up the Los Angeles Rams. In 2021, they won it all with Matthew Stafford under that trade. In 2022, they did squat and went 5-12. Probably the worst defending Super Bowl champion of all time. But they won it all, didn't they? They won it all, and they had an awful year the next year. And where are they now? Back in the postseason race, probably going to win the NFC West easily. So yes, it's a year-to-year league. It's not a year-to-years league. Period. End of story. That's my argument to anyone who thinks the Browns are 3-4 years away. No, you're a year or an off-season away, and that's every year. The Browns have been consistently bad for so long that you're so beat down by the fact that we've seen other teams do this all over the league. The Browns' culture has been bad for a very long time, and it's going to be hard to overcome that toxicity in the culture of the Cleveland Browns. Because we watch New England have a dynasty every year and make the playoffs. We watch Pittsburgh have an essential dynasty for quite some time. But they had some years where they didn't make the playoffs, but they're a consistent winner. I mean, the Cleveland Browns could get back into the playoff race by next year easily. I'm not even worried about that until 2025. I might be wrong. The Browns might be a mess next year too, but we don't know until next year happens. I think we have to let this play out and let's figure things out and see what goes on. But the quarterback situation is definitely the question mark. But if the Denver Broncos have showed you anything, you could take a rookie quarterback and go to the playoffs with them, because it looks like they're going to be doing that. If the Houston Texans teach you anything, you can take a rookie quarterback and go to the playoffs with them. They did it last year. In fact, they beat you, Cleveland Browns. So yes, it's a year-to-year league, not a year-to-years league. But the benching of Jameis Winston for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, personally, not for it. I think it's a little ridiculous. But, it is what it is. I personally would like Jameis Winston out there. But as I said, it's probably the right move. I just think it's ridiculous from a standpoint that Jameis Winston's probably the better quarterback between those two. And if you're trying to win a football game, I would put in Jameis Winston, not Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Another quarterback that's been benched, Kirk Cousins, has been benched for Michael Penix, the rookie. Probably the right move, too. I think that Kirk Cousins, when you look at him as his career quarterback, he's definitely above average. He hasn't ever really gone over the hump for you, but, Atlanta does have 2 wins over Tampa Bay. They're still in the thick of a playoff race, but Kirk Cousins has been struggling. So is this the right move? I'm not sure in terms of if you're going to win a playoff game, this is the right move. Obviously, Atlanta still has some nice weapons. They're probably going to win a game or 2 out of this stretch, and they do have that tiebreaker with Tampa Bay, so it's probably important for them to figure things out, and maybe they can do it with Michael Penix. But I still think this move was just made because they realized Kirk Cousins has been struggling. Michael Penix could come in, and Michael Penix maybe can clean up what's going on with the Atlanta Falcons these last 3 games, because that Oakland Raider game was a mess offensively with Kirk Cousins. It really, really was. I've been a Kirk Cousins defender most of my sports broadcasting tenure, but you know what? He was pretty bad in that game on Monday, so I could see why they made this move. Now, that comes to a question now, should Kirk Cousins go to a team like the Browns this upcoming offseason? Personally, I might not be against that, because Kevin Stefanski knows Kirk Cousins very well from his time in Minnesota. I might consider bringing Kirk Cousins in here on a cheap contract and having him compete with Deshaun Watson for the starting job, or run this offense, or possibly carry the Browns over the hump to a degree. When you have teams like Cincinnati and Baltimore out there, you need to get a good quarterback of some sort, because you already have Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, the 2 best in the division. Pittsburgh, I still don't think they have the best quarterback play in the division, but overall I think they have the best team in the division right now. So there's a lot of football left to be played here these last 3 weeks of the season. The Atlanta Falcons, obviously, they're in the thick of a divisional race, so that's going to be huge for them. We'll have to see what takes place. Also, before we wrap things up for today, I have the Broncos over the Chargers tonight. I think the Chargers are kind of finding the wrong spot of their season right now, and they're just not going to be able to overcome it. I think Denver ends up winning tonight. I know the game's in LA, but I still like the Broncos today. The Chargers have kind of been struggling lately, and I don't know what else to say, because their defense I still think is really good on paper, but that game against Tampa Bay last week was rough. So I'm not sold on the Chargers right now, and Jim Harbaugh is going to have to figure some things out with the LA Chargers. I still think both of them make the playoffs, but Denver should win tonight, and I think they clinch their ticket into the NFL postseason. Having said that, too, we have Pittsburgh this weekend taking on Baltimore. Obviously, a very big rivalry in recent years, going all the way back probably till when the Browns came back. So today I'm going to take Pittsburgh on Saturday. No, I'm going to take Baltimore on Saturday, actually. The Ravens, to me, feel like they need that game more. Not only that, I think the Ravens are at home. They'll have the home crowd with them. And Lamar Jackson's actually going to be playing in this game. He didn't play in the Pittsburgh game last year due to them already making the playoffs and having the first seed. So I think the Baltimore Ravens end up winning that game on Saturday. And then the Texans taking on the Chiefs. I like the Chiefs in this game just because they play their game so close, and Houston's kind of been streaky as of late, but I'm pulling for C.J. Stroud to hopefully get the upset because the Houston Texans are fun. I think they could upset the Chiefs. I think they're good enough to do it. I don't know if they will, though, so I'm going to take Kansas City in that game. Hope everyone has a good one, and let's conclude Raw Takes. One more point to make as we wrap the show up. I think it's utterly ridiculous that the NFL and college football is on the same day, and they need to talk. They need to talk, fix this so we can all watch every single game. It's absurd. Shame on the NFL. Shame on college football. Figure this out. Football, too many days a week. It's ridiculous. I have to chime that in. I don't want to watch Texans, Broncos, same time as I'm watching the other 4 games. The Broncos are playing tonight. I don't want to watch the Texans, Chiefs, a great NFL game, at the same time as some other college football programs, along with the Steelers, Ravens, a historical rivalry. I mean, Penn State's also playing that day. Come on. A lot of people from Pittsburgh are Penn State fans, too. This is absurd. Absolutely absurd. The NFL and college football have to be on separate days, period. End of story. I think it's going to be a huge disaster, and the ratings are going to conflict. But that's going to be it for today's edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. We'll have more on the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers, their matchup with the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe a little bit more insight on the in-season cup, or NBA Cup as they say nowadays. This weekend during Short Take Saturday, we'll also reflect on all the college football games, and we'll see who advances. So we're going to do all that on Saturday during Short Take Saturday. Thank you very much for tuning in to Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. We will be back next week for full editions of Raw Takes. Stay tuned for Short Takes. Hope everyone has a great holiday. We'll be back next Tuesday on Christmas Eve to reflect on some of the upcoming Christmas games, the games that you see this weekend, and way, way more. So happy early holidays, everybody. Make sure to stay tuned for Short Take Saturday this weekend, because I'm Andrew Hoty, and those are my Raw Takes. Have a good one, everybody.